Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our artist talk. I'm James Horner, the curator for the Magenta Lounge Queer Today Love, Power, Freedom exhibit. For some background, I'm an artist and board member of the Amos Gallery, a nonprofit artist-run gallery on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And I created the Magenta Lounge Queer Artist Collective in 2025. We had our first public art show in a building's windows in downtown Chicago last February. And since I was having a solo show at the Amos Gallery, I decided to have a Magenta Lounge exhibit there as well. The Queer Today exhibit responds to this moment in time and channels opinions, sexuality, icons, stereotypes, and more, amplifying the lived realities of LGBTQ plus artists. The exhibit spans identities and generations, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, young and old, from Boulder, Colorado to Brooklyn, New York. We are fortunate to have a few of the artists here today to learn about their work. Towne, you have two works in the show, Poconos, Rainbow Mountain Cabins, and Orange Shirt on Plaid Comforter. Can you give us more details on these works and your current practice with oil painting?
Yeah, hey James. My name's George Towne. I've met James actually about at least 10 years ago. We were in a exhibition together at Leslie Lohman Gallery when we were in the GMHC artist show, and that was a really fun introduction to meeting you. And then just through the years, through we've been in other group shows together, and it was really nice to be able to be asked by you to be a part of this collective. And it was really fun to also be in that Chicago show because that was the first time I was a part of anything that was like a public art uh, um, exhibition because it was like a slideshow onto buildings. And I didn't get to attend in person, but from the photos I saw, this looked very impressive, and I was really happy to and to meet a couple of you already, and now I'm even meeting more virtually. So that's been really nice. But as far as the works that I've put in the show, I've always been an oil painter or interested in figurative works. I've kind of shifted in between like a paint what's been I don't know I call the painterly realistic style, meaning that you can see the brushstroke to more recently, a lot of people have been referring to my work as photorealistic, and I think that's fair because I use photography as I take my own photos and I paint from photos that I take usually. That's my method. It's interesting that in fact, my choosing this particular model was interesting for me because it's actually really old photo reference that I took back in the mid 90s, and in my apartment of a model that I was really new with taking pics of models. It was more like friends, and I would just say, I wouldn't hire someone. I would just say, hey, would you be interested in modeling for me? And this my friend GR posed for me, and for photos. And back in the day, that was before digital like for very young people, it's very funny to even say this but you really had to back in the day, you really had to if you were going to take a picture of a nude, you couldn't just take the picture and then see it yourself on your computer. You had to actually go to the photo mat and kind of hope that the person running the photo mat wasn't going to be homophobic and be like, oh, or like do something with your film, or just judge you, or whatever. Like there were like mild forms of homophobia. And this is a model that I did do a painting that a nude painting of in back then. And but I had all this other photo reference of him, and I decided to use the photo reference and scan it into the computer. And that way, when I did that, I was able to kind of blow up the photo reference. I was able to lighten the dark areas that I really hadn't seen because I really only had 4 by 6 image for years and stuck in an album. I had like these 4 by 6 photos of this guy, and I always liked them, but like they were dark and grainy and weird. But once I was able to kind of use contemporary methods to blow up the reference, I really kind of had fun, like seeing all this deep photographic detail, and to respond to that with paint, like the plaid comforter he's on. It probably doesn't even look like something that somebody contemporary would have. It's like a very 90s, I think. um, uh, Type of comforter, I guess.
George,
But
everything old is new again.
yeah, I think you're right. So yeah, so I think that that was kind of that was just a fun thing for me. Certainly, my friend who posed for me, God, was it 30 years ago, didn't expect me to just start do a new painting of him that, um, from 30 years ago. Neither of us looked like we did back then. But anyway, that was a little bit of the story behind that. Plus, yeah, I'm able to get a little bit more with my brushstroke. I'm able to I don't really think of it as photorealistic, but I guess if the shoe fits, then I allow it, like the other image is a landscape, and I do like the I do like to do things that are gay. So even if I do a landscape, there's a place in the Poconos where I've gone. I'm from the tri-state area, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York. That little place where the three states meet is where I grew up on the New York border. But like the closest gay bar was actually a gay resort called Rainbow Mountain, and it was a place so that you could go and stay, and it still exists, although the current owners aren't gay themselves. They've kept the name Rainbow Mountain, and they haven't been doing a great job with promotion. And now, on the in the bottom at the bottom of the mountain is a valley, and there's a lot of the gay community has gone to this new camp place called Camp Out, and it's kind of interesting because. Even like 5, 6 years ago, Rainbow Mountain was where everybody from that area would go to. But anyway, I always liked the retro quality of the cabins. It really feels like something from like the 1950s or 60s, the way they paint it. I'm not I didn't show a view of the little porches that each one of these cabins has, but they're quaint and fun. And there's a painter named Lois Dodd who I love, and was looking at some of her images, and she had I'm actually even wondering if this one painting of hers is a lot more minimal than what she does than what I do, but I was just wondering if she was actually at Rainbow Mountain herself. I think she is gay. But regardless, that's kind of what my inspiration going into that was, and I think I got a nice image of it. So yeah, so those are my two images, and I don't know. Do we ask for comments now, or are we now or feedback, or are we just going into each person does one? Uh,
Yeah, if anyone wants to discuss George's work, that would be great. Otherwise, we can move on and always talk about it later.
I just love that it's ti like time capsules.
oh,
Yeah.
A place back in time. The landscape painting of the of Camp Out, is that from a more recent trip there or from your memory? Did you say? I'm sorry.
that's actually Rainbow Mountain. But yeah, I've been going. My husband and I have been renting cars from New York and going up there. And I always take a ton of because now everybody's got a phone in their pocket now if they've got an iPhone or something like that. But I always take a zillion photos. But yeah, I'm always just kind of interested in like maybe how the sunlight grabs uh, looks in either the sunrise or the sunset, or if there's something kind of interesting happening. And yeah, it does kind of have this kind of nostalgia feel for another time that that I like. A lot of times I've been doing when I've been doing landscapes and playing with them, and I've been like the idea of them, but like the like Fire Island, for those who don't know, maybe we had in the New York area, a lot of New York gay people know that Fire Island is where a lot of people go because you can easily take transit there and you don't need a car, so you could to get there, or you go by train and ferry to get there. Um, but uh, um, for something like this, you actually have to rent a car and go to. But it's probably the amount of time is similar to what you would take to get to Fire Island from New York City if you have access to a car. And it's cool. And they also have an in-ground swimming pool that's beautiful, especially during like July, August. It's can be quite a scene and fun. And um, but yeah, I've also been doing landscape paintings of other gay related areas like the Meat Rack and Fire Island. I also um, James has done it as well, but there's a residency program in Provincetown, and I took a lot of I've never I've haven't really I've been to I haven't been to Provincetown since the 90s, but I finally got to go in the fall, and I took a lot of photos, and I plan to do some Provincetown landscapes for the first time. Because I've never done it before, but that certainly has lots of gay areas. Provincetown itself is a pretty gay place.
That's great. I think you did a postcard from the edge. I saw. Is that like a view from your window from the
From the residency.
the house you were staying in or something like that? That was
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Out the window of the studio, actually.
Yeah,
You can see
cool.
across the street to this cute little house. And yeah, so I guess that's technically my first Provincetown painting, that
Yeah,
one.
that's great.
Well, I did that on a 4x6 postcard that
Yeah,
just in the visual aids postcards from the Edge show, which I try to do every year.
nice. Any other questions for George? Or we could also come back later. Okay. Dustin Orient is showing a work called 599, a diptych photograph of a neighborhood deer. Orient's portraits highlight his experiences being a queer and transgender man. Dustin, can you tell us more about your photography practice, please?
Yeah, it's nice to be here. I started taking photographs when I was 15, and I just turned 25. So 10 years ago, photography has always been like such a big part of my life as a way for me to like express myself and how I'm feeling. I always used to be more of like a shy kid growing up in school. I didn't have many friends. I dealt with a lot of bullying and things in my personal life. So for me, art has always been like that outlet, that escape, that chance to kind of like express myself and find my community. Yeah.
Great. Um, yeah, I really like this piece. I don't know, there's something about it that was really transfixing and just, your work. I know you've done, so you did some work that I included in a show of Amos, Gallery on Artsy with fruit. And I know you also do some figures, people figures, and maybe some of them are you. Um, but I love this deer. I think it's really cool. There's something kind of just stark about it. I don't know, that I think is like really interesting and really
Yeah.
nice. Um,
Yeah, definitely. I like to do a lot of work with fruit and like relation to the body and portraiture. But the deer, I thought it was really interesting how we like number deer, how they have
yeah,
like the deer tag on them, and it's like they're just like he's just like 599 out of however
yeah,
many years he is, but yet he's still like a person and he's still like an individual deer with his own story, but we don't really look at it.
yeah.
And it's kind of like that with people, and especially queer people. I think that a lot of the time being gay, sometimes we just get viewed as, oh, we're just another gay person, but there's so much nuance between like gay people. Like there's nuance and then there's so much differences between stories. So it was interesting that it all kind of came together.
Great.
It's interesting the being tagged I think is a really important part of the piece, and we wear tags, sometimes not applied by us and sometimes applied by us. So yeah, it's a great metaphor.
Great. Well, thank you, Dustin. It's great to finally meet you because we were working together on the last exhibit for Artsy.
Of course, we need to meet in
So,
person soon.
yes. Well, hopefully you'll be at the opening tomorrow if you're
Yeah,
free. Okay, great. Um, so Tracy von Ahsen, um, her work Inner Battle is an analog collage capturing the quiet war between the self you're told to present and then the one fighting to break through the performance. Tracy, can you tell us how you got into collage?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you so much for having me a part of this show. I absolutely love the mission of the gallery, and I think it's a really important fixture in the Lower East Side. So thank you for the incredible work and programming you do there. For me, I started as a photo major in the early 2000s. I went to FIT, and I was really lucky. I got to live at the Chelsea Hotel, and I really always was more on the fine art side of things. Even though I went to this commercial school, I was interested in heavy color saturation and color temperature. I love taking multiple exposures, which I really feel like relates to my collage work today. I got interested in Polaroid, ripping them apart, deconstructing them. I was like always interested in the self and self exploration. That's a lot of what that, early Polaroid work was about. Of course, I was inspired by Cindy Sherman, and like every, I think, young 20-year-old woman is at that time, exploring the arts. I even had a Polaroid day lab where I would deconstruct the Polaroids and then emulsion lifts and image transfers. So I was always really interested in the mixed media. And of course, I was always building out a complex journal of my emotions through that time. And then when I hit my 30s, that's really when I found collage as a more primary medium. I was really discovering my own sexuality at that time, and I was pretty confused. I was married to a man at the time, and I was just really not sure really who I was. And I found through collaging, it gave me a break from my day to day. It's very therapeutic, just the analog act of cutting and gluing. And then what I noticed was I started to interact with my higher self and my subconscious mind because I never really preconceived what I was making. I do it intuitively. So I started to see the symbolism in my work, and I was always drawn to women in my work. I was not putting men in any of this work. So it really did help me discover my inner world, which is why I kind of even teach collage today to others, to help others to really make connections they wouldn't otherwise have seen. So I'm so grateful for the medium for that. Fast forward to today, I continually turn the work over to a higher power. I'm interested in spiritual studies. And what I found is, as much as I put in my higher self into the driver's seat, I can make more complex stories and interesting stories, things I couldn't achieve through photography alone, just weirder things. And the weirder, the better for me. So I sort of found this was my calling, and I'm kind of obsessed with trees. So the whole paper connection there just really works for me too. Photography is more of a techie type of technology, and that did challenge me, and I love that. But it did keep me in the analog realm when I moved towards the paper. And I kind of stayed out of technology for a long time. And now that I'm in my 40s and seeing the world explode with technology, I really feel like I was kept in the cocoon of analog for a reason. And I think that's really beautiful about the medium for me now and being able also, again, to present that back to people. So that's sort of how I journeyed through my way to collage. And I'm kind of feeling like the photography may come back in later on because I use found imagery through high fashion magazines. So I'm kind of keeping current with today, what's going on. And I think that kind of dance between what's relevant and in the culture is also flowing through my work pretty nicely. And in this piece, Inner Battle, I think, you can just see really just executed so well what was going on in my brain. Like this person I want to be, looking calm on the outside, floating through life, put together. I always able to kind of have that facade. But really, I had a battle going on inside about, unraveling my life, who I wanted to be, and, that continuous battle between the self you present outside and the self you are inside. Thank you so much.
That's great, Tracy. And great, interesting about how you were working with photography and really taking it apart. And then it kind of like symbolizes how collages work. And sometimes I think when you're working with your hands and doing it, it's a whole different thing than on a computer when you're like working around a screen because you're like, it's just a whole different process. So I think that's great, and it'd be great to
Yeah, I
see.
really love that you mentioned that because one of the things I also noticed was like I was taking bits of my life that were out of control and then reconstructing them into something beautiful. And they weren't always perfect. Like, there might be a piece of a figure I want to use where her arm's missing. And I can't make the composition exactly how I would as an artist's eye, but I have to work around that and make it into something beautiful. So that's kind of the metaphor I see for my collage work as well.
Great, great. Any questions for Tracy?
I'm just curious about the background image. It's such a captivating image, with these women in these high heels and pantyhose. Anything you want to share about the source of the imagery you've used?
Sure, these are Christian Louboutin ad with the shoes, I think were what they were highlighting. And I think they're made out of, I don't know, it was a while ago. And I don't really remember where I got the image in the front, but it's always a mix of some kind of contemporary high fashion magazine. Not always an ad, but sometimes if it works and it fits the narrative, then I'll use it.
Yeah, it just when, minus the shoes, it reminds me of a performance from when I was in art school of these two women, this durational performance where they were pushing each other until one of them fell. So that just reminded me of that. It's interesting.
Yeah, and actually, I don't think women wear pantyhose like they used to, right? So that's kind of interesting that they use them and they almost look kind of cool. They're almost like pants, but or like leggings or something, but they're kind of transparent. They're really it's kind of interesting. Maybe they're
Yeah,
having
and
a
I love the
comeback.
women's bodies. They're like bulky.
Yeah.
You can see that,
Yeah.
they're not like I love the figure in the front. She's like feminine, and then it's like the messiness of who women are really supposed to be. And then, who we're told we are, whether we're gay or
Yeah.
straight, and it's like
Yeah.
I think that image really depicts that so well.
Yeah. They have real bodies. They're not
Yeah, me too,
emaciated
exactly.
models. So well, thanks
Something
a
about
lot,
the,
Tracy.
well,
Thank
actually,
you.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, something about the back image reminded me of the like some like that it might be something from the 40s. I mean, also maybe because it was
Yeah.
black and white, but the I don't know if you know what I'm talking about if I say the name Betty Page.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
she was like I don't know how you would
Like pinup girl kind of that old
yeah,
school,
yeah.
like probably their underwear, the way women used to wear more elaborate lingerie and the pantyhose which were much more of a thing back then.
Yeah, in the 50s and
So
60s, I guess that
yeah.
also it just sort of feels like they could be in that Mexican wrestling kind of there's something about how the dress doesn't feel as American to me as it is maybe more Spanish or something about the. But that was interesting to hear that it's actually a contemporary image, because you just assume that it's that because it's black and white that it might be something you found that was really old or something. But yeah, it's very cool. And did you block out their faces, or did it was the image like that?
The
Uh,
image was like that, and I was drawn to it because of that sense of oldness and kind of like those 40s boxers
yeah,
and
yeah.
that battle that looks like it's going on with her, within herself, because it looks like almost like it could be the same woman, which really attracted me as well, rather than two separate women fighting each other.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that and taking out their face or by or finding it that way, like they symbolize like the every woman in some
That's
sort of way.
interesting because I always, if you look at my work, my I started cutting out eyes of the images of the people. I wasn't sure why I was doing that, and now I really remove almost the whole face, almost all the time, not all the time, but that is so it can be every woman, and you can kind of project or every person really, and you can kind of see yourself in the imagery. And I started to realize that's why I was removing primarily the eyes of the figures.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool.
Great. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
So another one of the artists in the group is Aaron Wilder. So he has a piece called Delivered Under the Similitude of a Dream. Aaron, can you give us some background on this work? And is this a prime example of your practice?
So this is a project called Delivered Under the Similitude of a Dream, as James mentioned. And this was a really long-term project that I worked on from about 2015 to 2019. And it's from the 1678 book by John Bunyan, Pilgrim's Progress. It's a heavily didactic tale of how to live your life as a Christian. And part of my family growing up is super evangelical Christian. And so this was sort of a part of my life and childhood. And it was the first book I remember, the first sort of like adult book I remember reading as a child. And it's really used for indoctrination in the evangelical Christian community. Um, and this book has a whole bunch of characters in it. And the project for me started as an installation project when I was living in San Francisco at the San Francisco Mint. And I took over a brick vault that was inside the Mint. And these images, so this is one example of 75 images where I pair an image of myself from childhood. So this is me. And I pair it with one of the characters' names from the book. And it was a projection onto these ripped out pages from the book Pilgrim's Progress. I got hundreds of these different editions of Pilgrim's Progress, and I completely covered all the walls of the brick vault in the Mint. And then on projected onto them were these images of myself juxtaposed to these character names. And this kind of came about from a number of things happening all at the same time. So this is when I moved from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco. And at that time, my family was selling the home that I grew up in childhood. And so I'd inherited or I brought with me to San Francisco all of this ephemera, all of this stuff from childhood that I hadn't really looked or thought about in a long time. And at the same time, I found a copy of Pilgrim's Progress in the free bin at the library. And so that sort of juxtaposition of this going back through childhood memories and then finding this book that had a lot of meaning for me a long time ago was really something that was, it just seemed like I should have needed to do something about it, needed to do something with the content. And so it started out, as I mentioned, with these projections in the Mint. And there was an audio component that were recordings of myself in a much deeper voice like this that were from text that my father wrote to me throughout childhood in cards and letters. And so I forget the full title of this one, but it's something like, I hope you show those tree-hugging Democrats what it means to be strong and true to the one who made you. And so there were all of these different sort of statements that I paired with each of these 75 personas that I embody. And so the photographs are of me. They're from childhood. So they're scanned and edited versions of analog photos. And let's see if there's anything else I was going to mention about this. So after the installation, I went and made this into a collage project. So this is one of the 75 collages that resulted. And the only difference between the projections and the collages is that in the collages, you have these pages from the book Pilgrim's Progress. And that was from the copy that I found in that free bin at the library. And you'll see that there's the text are overlapping each other. So they're basically, if you imagine two pages of a book, but the paper is transparent, how the letters on both sides sort of go into each other and make it difficult to read. Because I think a lot of the messaging, when we're younger, is difficult to read, is difficult to understand from that kind of perspective. And so this character, Mrs. Filth, is a minor character in the book, but she plays kind of an important allegorical role. And that is the very quick overview of the book is that it's this person named Christian who's making his way from the city of sin to the celestial city. So he's going on this trek, this odyssey of becoming a good Christian and going to heaven. And he meets all of these characters along the way. And so he encounters a man with a muckrake who is gathering all of this garbage. So what's described as filth, which, I think would be shit, and mud and all of this debris. And there's the celestial being who comes down and offers to the man with the muckrake the celestial crown of spiritual salvation, but he doesn't look up. He doesn't see it because he doesn't look up. And so instead, he's looking down and raking, and Mrs. Filth offers him a bag of money. So it's the symbol of moral corruption of the world, and that spiritual decay leads to sort of debauchery and sin. And so this image of me as a child is me in my earliest drag performance, wearing my mother's clothing, including her clip-on earrings. And the whole thing about this from childhood is that I saw all these films with these very strong female characters that just sort of played over and over in my head, like Whoopi Goldberg in Sister Act or Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman. And so these were kind of the personas I was embodying here. And your question about is this indicative of my practice? Yes, my practice as an artist is sort of photo or lens based predominantly, but I'm an interdisciplinary artist and the work takes different forms. And so I do a lot of collage, I do a lot of imaging, because to me, juxtaposition is a really important and really powerful way to ask questions of the viewer and of ourselves as artists.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. I love it. I didn't know that was you when you were a kid, so it's great that you have pictures of that.
This is
That's
Mrs.
amazing.
Phil.
That's amazing. I love it. Thank you so much. So the last artist we have here tonight is Michael Young. And he has a piece called Hard Day at Work September, which is part of Hidden Glances, a series using layered collages made from vintage gay pornographic calendars to explore absence and presence. So Michael, your collage is similar to Tracy's in a way. It's more male figures, of course, but I just wondered what you think of that comment and what will you be working on next? Are you going to stay with these kind of collages, or is there something else you're looking at for the future?
Yeah, so it's interesting after hearing Tracy speak, there's a lot of overlap in terms of the idea of finding oneself and the reconciling. And so that was something that I was looking at in my work. And I think also you mentioned the removal of the face to present the every woman in a similar way. My removal of the face and my removal of the body is in a way the attempt to create a space, a portal, a window, a gaze to kind of see through the man, but also see the man at the same time. All of the images, so like going back, all of these all of these collages are built and constructed from just two images that come out of the same calendar. Um, I was sourcing stuff through eBay from for another project, completely unrelated, and that hasn't even begun yet. And one of the sellers started to throw in some like free stuff, and he knew that I was interested in like post-war kind of masculine physique calendars and magazines, and so he just started throwing in these calendars that were from the 90s. And at first, I was completely befuddled. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing with this material at all. And as I was seeing more and more of them come in the mail, I was like, wow, I was like, there's so many years that where I lived my life prior to coming out, where I felt like all this time had elapsed and I didn't really get to experience it. And it's not to necessarily say that these would have been things that I would have hung up on my wall as a teenager, because at the time coming out in 2000 was still, I don't even know if any 16-year-old gay kid would hang a like nude male calendar on their walls. And the funny thing is, I don't know that many people did in general, because many of the ones that I buy actually come still in their shrink wrap. It's very rare to actually have a calendar that has like doctor's appointments on them or anything of that nature. So I think they, even though they're made as a calendar to mark time, a lot of times I think they're completely for gratuitous sexual purposes and collecting, and maybe that's about it. But so getting back to the whole point of this is I was really interested in like using the calendar as a metaphor for lost time, as a compression of the time when I was in the closet, and the push and pull between wanting to be seen and wanting to see other men and be recognized, while at the same time expressing that complete fear of being outed. I think for a long time before coming out, I really thought I had created this facade of like heterosexuality in my life. And unbeknownst to me, it was pretty much a farce. It was like this sort of two-way mirror in which I was seeing this reflection that I thought was presenting as masculine, and everyone else was seeing through it. So those are kind of the main ideas that come behind it. So, when you look at Tracy's work, she's kind of calling from a lot of different places, whereas I'm setting up really tight parameters in that these can only come, each collage can only be made by two images that are coming out of the same calendar, because I'm really beholden to the idea that time is really of the essence within each piece. And hence the reason why I also include a month, which is really just at random. But it's some people don't always realize that they're made of calendars, so the part of the title included in that at least kind of creates a bit of a nod to the work. And all the source material is coming from, when I was born in 1979 through when I came out in 2000. So I'm also keeping, the source material and the publication years really limited. So that's kind of how it works on occasion. The images in the back where the images in the front will be spliced, and they are all hand cut. And I do like that aspect of it because similar to Tracy, kind of, I was taught photography in its analog form. And then when I got back to it, it was, I completely had to reteach myself, how to work on a computer, how to work digitally, how to print digitally, thinking that it was going to be super simple and realizing that it was completely as complicated as working in a darkroom. But I really was was drawn to the tactile nature of working with the paper and also making these cuts that are completely permanent once you make them. So really looking at the images within each calendar and making decisions regarding the silhouettes and figuring out which one would be an interesting um, figure to remove that still kind of allows the viewer to understand the figure and how the figure is positioned within it, and then how does it work in conversation with another body within the same calendar. So that was something that kind of really interests me. So keeping the limits on the work and how it's constructed. Perhaps it's just my sort of the way I kind of go about my life, being a complete control freak. So that maybe is just something I need to work through on my own, but I think it's served this project quite nicely. And kind of sets it apart from a lot of mainstream collage where I feel a lot of times, and I don't think this is part of Tracy's work at all. I think you hit a really nice balance of sourcing and collecting images to put in your collages. I think oftentimes collage artists, at least this is just my opinion, uh, become it becomes excessive and there's just too much going on and it's just like just add it and just throw it and something's going to stick. And so I'm kind of looking at collage in a more reductive way, like how little do I need for this to work and to push it and to create a new composition that still resolves itself in the end with as few parts as possible. And so I think that to me is really what drives the practice. So right now, in terms of to answer your second question, like what's next, I'm hoping to try to kind of break some of these rules that I've set forth in making this series. And I'm also interested in starting to bring in the female figure. It's something that to me is a bit dicey because I question how people might interpret my vision of the female figure. But growing up, all of my friends were females. All of my friends, identified as women. And so to me, they played such a pivotal role. Um, and there's still an appreciation for their beauty. So and women were also a way for me to kind of mask, or at least try to mask my being gay. So I'm starting to play around with source material that's coming out from still around that same time, and how do I work with both women and men to play with those two bodies and see how they come together. So there's that, and then there's a few other projects. So I'm kind of dabbling in a whole bunch of things right now that are, documentary photography, which is kind of where my work was originally rooted, through my work when I was in undergrad, and I started that late, to now collage. It seems like people are thinking like I'm just a collage artist, but I do kind of still have this deep-rooted love for a more sort of post-documentary process of working. So I hope that answers your question.
That's
I
great.
bored you all to tears.
No, it's been great to hear your process. And I was just realizing that most of the artists on this talk are photographers or work in collage or whatnot. So it's kind of interesting, besides George, who does oil painting. But so it's kind of interesting that we all you were the ones that signed up or were able to do this
Yeah.
talk. So
But if you think about
um,
it, even George is going back. I mean,
yeah, he's
like if
yeah,
you're thinking about it, like the
yeah,
images are in his are sort of
yeah,
Photo
knit
base.
from a
too,
photo.
like my work. So
Yeah,
when I first looked at George's work, I didn't see a connection. But after hearing him speak about,
yeah,
about his motivations and going back and revisiting and reconnecting with a past
definitely.
is something that's
Yeah,
quite
Well, I
interesting.
mean, well, yeah, just one thing back to that too, that I didn't get to mention is that I would take these figure drawing and painting classes in college and then be really frustrated that they'd, even in the classes I liked the most, the 3 hours was maybe the most they would ever have a model pose. Um, And I mean, there was this. I did get to take something called intensive painting workshop where the class would be 3 hours long, but then the following week, the models would get in the same exact pose they were in the previous week, and then we had actually 9 hours with one pose, and that was probably where I really started to notice a difference with that I was actually getting, but then, like, when it would come to me trying to set up a friend, I think it would be like sadistic to like make somebody sit there for 3 hours while and I mean, when I go to these drawing groups like the drink and draws in town, there's somebody else keeping time, and you really kind of, you start drawing and you get into your own little world so quick that you don't even think to yourself that oh, this guy's got to take a break, or or something, like you don't want them to take a break, but like at the same time, like if somebody else, yeah, but you don't even realize, did 2 or 3 hour like, did 10 minutes go by, did 15 minutes go by, you don't know. But I started to ask people to pose in a position that they could hold if they were a posing for a life model. So and that's why a lot of people maybe come at my work and they think, oh, maybe he did this from life. Like, they don't think, oh, it's done from a photo. But yeah, it's like you're saying, it's totally like, I had to compose it like a photographer would. I had to do things with the light in a special way. Um, I guess I'm wondering, with the people, especially Michael and Tracy. It sounds like at least the collage you've done so far, if I'm hearing right, has been it seems like what's inspired you is working with either like magazines or calendars, in your case, Michael, that already existed, and it seems like a big part of the process that you're actually cutting from um, the actual object from the 90s or from whenever. But I've done a minimal amount of collage, nothing I ever would put online really, but it kind of hit me that you don't have to ruin a nice vintage magazine if you were to scan it in and print it out. And because I also print my own photo reference, I'm really getting good at printing my own photo reference, I think, in my own mind at least. I just wonder, is that of any interest to you, doing ever, or do you do that ever, or is
You
it?
know what? It's funny that you asked that because when I first started, I was digitizing them before cutting because I think I was so scared of making the cuts.
Hmm.
And also, some of these calendars I've spent quite a bit of money on, and they range in value. So there have been some people that have been like, I can't believe you spend that much money on a calendar and then take a blade to it. And so I've tried working digitally in terms of, kind of just using a lot of paths and masking that way. And there's just something that just doesn't sit right these do exist in the end as images that are printed out. So unlike Tracy, where they're all unique, mine are in small editions. So when you look at it, so they do kind of function kind of between collage and photography, and that they are, it's not just one and um, but I really enjoy that process and the look of seeing the cut in the paper and the way in which the blade interacts with it. And I'll use Photoshop to do some minimal retouching, where I might have messed up. I know some people like that. Maybe it just goes back to, again, my tendencies towards trying to be a little more perfect about it. And so I'll go back and I'll remove some issues that might have been from the original printing or things like that. It's stuff that I just find really distracting in it in the end. Because if I'm making something that's at 32 by 40 inches, I know that when I look at work, for some reason my eye goes right to like the imperfections. So I try to at least minimize those as much as I can in the work that I'm making. But I think some of the older calendars, like the ones that I have, like that are from 1979, that I found like once on eBay and never again found on eBay. I haven't even touched those. I'm still scared to put a blade to them. So I'm toying with potentially the idea of digitizing them, printing them, and then cutting them out from that. But I feel like it's almost like faking it then in a way, and I feel like I must commit to cutting. But there are other people who are collectors who have come at me and have said like you're destroying years of material that might not exist in in collections. How dare you, how dare you be so, brazen and bold to go against our history. And I was like, okay, I think you're getting a little,
Michael, I was going to say, like, for me, I use the original material because I feel like that's me upgrading my work. And like these magazines are like $60 at a time, and I do cut
Yeah.
them. I'll buy like multiples of them and then cut them. So I totally relate to the material of it. And I sometimes I do scan some pieces, but again, it's like the paper quality and what the person is getting is more of like a fine art piece for me. But I am starting to print onto other materials after I collage, which is where I think my work is now evolving. I think a lot of it was out of fear for me because I just wasn't so techy. And if I had
Yeah.
known how to do those things, perhaps I would have. And now it's just kind of been part of my practice to have a hoarder's mentality and have stacks and stacks of the magazines.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's now become an obsession. It's like I spend many hours just scrolling through eBay and then now I have I have duplicates just because I've completely lost track of my materials. But
Totally.
once they're done, they get stored away as if they're almost like negative. So I really treat my collages as negatives. That's something that I don't usually talk about a lot of times. Some people will say like, do you sell the original? And it's like, no, I really don't. Like, unlike you, Tracy, who's using glue and really they're becoming permanent pieces. Mine live temporarily as collages. They're being held down by like really not really tacky and sticky artist tape. And then
Interesting.
they're made and then they're separated and then sleeved and put in a binder. So to me, I call them my negatives.
That's really cool. That's so interesting. Thanks for sharing that. It's been so fascinating hearing about your whole process. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks.
I just wanted to mention in relation to your work, Michael, I realize that it has a functional purpose, but that hole
Oh
in the
yeah.
guy's head is just wonderfully loaded with associations. So I love that as just a little detail.
It's thank you for pointing that out, Aaron. This is the only one out of the whole entire series that actually has the hole where the push pin would go to
Oh,
hold it up. A lot of times it doesn't like the top of because of the scale of a lot of those calendars, they don't fall within the 4:5 ratio that I work with in the final image. So on occasion you'll see in some of my pieces, you'll see the borders or you'll see the edges, but a lot of times they don't become a pivotal part. But this felt just right within this piece.
Well, it's sort of like what Roland Barthes called the punctum,
yep.
something about a photograph that just pokes you, as it were.
Mhm.
But also, this is where you puncture uh, the calendar. So really interesting.
Thanks.
Great. Any other questions or comments before we close?
Well, James, you have an installation in this show in addition to your solo show
Oh,
upstairs. And I was wondering if you could
yeah.
talk a little bit about the wall of icons.
Yeah, sure.
Oops.
Um, so I have been looking at different kind of icons from the queer people, and maybe they're all mine anyway. Maybe there's no one else's but mine. But I've also researched the visual aids archives, looking at a number of artists that had died of AIDS. So I started kind of doing work on around this, and I was actually at an artist residency in France in 2024, and we had to work on a project, and it just came to me. I was like, well, maybe I'll just put all these icons around the chateau I was staying at. So I did this oil paint gouache painting of Cookie Mueller. She's the picture, the painting at the top. And so in this exhibit, I thought, why don't I create this kind of like wall of icons? So Cookie Mueller, who is a John Waters actress, and she's a writer, and she wrote a really interesting book recently. It was kind of like a memoir, something about a pool and dark water and whatnot. And it was her writing is really interesting. So if you ever um, need something good to read, look her up. She's very funny. I think she's funnier than John Waters actually, and I kind of see where John Waters got his humor. Maybe it was from her. But I also have a record box from Liberace that was my father's. And then this mirror of Donna Summer that I got like at Corvettes, which was like an old department store back in the 70s, because I was really into Donna Summer at the time. And then as a kid, I used to draw drawings of Joan Crawford. So this was, I don't know why. It was the time Mommy Dearest came out, and I actually met Christina Crawford at a Caldors, which was like our old, like, I don't
Polls.
know. Yeah. And actually, the Coles on Central Avenue
Yeah, it was a
was
Caldor.
Caldors.
Yeah.
So I used to collect autographs. And so I really wanted an autographed book of Mommy Dearest, and I got that. Um, but so my friend Kay in Chicago, I used to send her letters. I don't know why, but I would send her these drawings of Joan Crawford, and I put her in all these designer clothes, and there was always something about Christina, and she would have a knife, and she's like, just like slashed Christina or something. But anyway, so my friend Kay had kept all these images, and she gave them to me. And so I created this kind of collage of Joan Crawford. That's the one at the bottom. And then I also created some pottery. I worked at Greenwich House Pottery for a while, and I did some pottery there. One is Keith Haring, a face jug. I started getting into face jugs because of just looking at Americana around New York at the big winter shows and stuff like that. And so I thought it'd be cool to make these like into icons. So I did a Keith Haring face jug, and I did a Marsha P. Johnson face jug. And those are in the installation called Wall of Icons. But that's pretty much it. As part of my practice, I like looking at artists and queer artists, and not just queer artists, but those that have passed, and looking at historical information about them. As George has said, we'd done some shows at the Leslie Lohman Museum, and the Leslie Lohman Museum collected art of all these people that died of AIDS, probably mostly men. And I remember seeing a video. I went to some event, it was an opening or something of a show, and they had this video. I think it was Hugh Steers or another artist, and it was of a gallery director and how he was talking to, it might not have been Hugh Steers, but this artist, and saying, like, no one's ever going to buy this artwork. And it was like, so it wasn't even that like nudity or anything. It was like images of um, dancers at the Gaiety Club, which I used to go to when I was a kid, or probably, I don't know, 16, 17, 18. It was in Times Square, and it had these dancers, and then there was mostly old men in the theater. And so it showed like maybe a dancer and some maybe a video, and then had the old men watching. Um, but supposedly that was just like so like, straight people at the time in the 80s aren't going to buy stuff that have to do with gay people. And a lot of it had to do with AIDS, and how that was just like, that kind of casts a shadow over gay people, gay art, everything. But I think queer art also over the past maybe number of years. I mean, I think it's coming back into like kind of it's okay to buy this, and it's more of a marketable thing. but for a long time, I don't think it was something that like the art market was serious about because I was like, oh well, that's just like, queer art and whatnot. And I think Tamba Finland, like his works go for a lot now, and people are more like a lot of, the big auction houses in the art world are more interested now in that, and just, queer artists in general. So I think it's great that you know, we're coming back. So anyway, um, that's basically my work on the queer icons and what's in the show.
Thank you, James.
Um, thank you. Glad you asked. I forgot about me. So anyway, I just want to thank everyone for attending and artists for giving your feedback and all of you that joined tonight to listen to our Queer Today artist talk. And tomorrow is our reception at the Amosino Gallery on 191 Henry Street in New York City from 6 to 8. So whoever's able to come, be great to see you. And good night, everyone. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Good night.